Hi everyone, Mrs. Nunneley here. Thank you for joining me for the next 10 minutes for your reading challenge today. I'm going to be reading you a book that I absolutely loved when I first read it. I was a teenager when I first read this book, and here it is. It's called 1984 and it's by George Orwell. Now, it wasn't actually written in 1984, it was written in 1949. And therefore it was set in the future, and the future was 1984. And so this was George Orwell's idea of a science fiction book. Now, the story itself is a very famous one, and I'm sure you've heard of the term Big Brother. Well, that comes from this book, Big Brother is Watching You. Now, this is a story about a man called Winston Smith, and he is living in London in 1984, but it's a different type of world. It's a world where the government, called the Party, can control every aspect of every citizen's life. And this character, we follow him through the story and we see how difficult life is. He is being watched at every living moment. Hence, Big Brother is watching you. I'm going to read the first chapter, or part of the first chapter, with you today. It was written in 1949, so there will be some words that will be challenging, but we will just stop and discuss them along the way. And then at the end you can do your quiz. Now, what I'd like you to look at when we read the first sentence is, what do you notice that is unusual about this first opening sentence? It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dusk from entering along with him. The hallway smelt of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At one end of it, a coloured poster, too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. It depicted simply an enormous face, more than a metre wide. The face of a man of about 45, with a heavy black moustache and ruggedly handsome features. Winston made for the stairs. It was no use trying the lift. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working. Let's just pause on that, the word seldom. Can you work out what it means? Do you think it means the lift was always working, or hardly ever working? Well, if you said hardly ever working, you'd be correct. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working, and at present the electric current was cut off during daylight hours. It was part of the economy drive in preparation for Hate Week. The flat was 7 flights up, and Winston, who was 39 and had a varicose ulcer above his right ankle, went slowly, resting several times on the way. On each landing opposite the lift shaft, the poster with the enormous face gazed from the wall. It was one of those pictures which are so contrived that the eyes follow you about when you move. Big Brother is watching you, the caption beneath it ran. Inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of, turn the page, figures, which had something to do with the production of pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plaque, like a dulled mirror, which formed part of the surface of the right-hand wall. Winston turned a switch and the voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. The instrument, the telescreen it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. He moved over to the window, a smallish, frail figure, the meagreness of his body. Meagreness of his body. That's an interesting word, isn't it? If something is meagre, do you think it's a lot or a little? If you said a little, you'd be right. Meagre generally means that you don't have enough of something, or if you do, you only have a very small amount of it. So the meagreness of his body means his body is quite small size. A small, frail figure, the meagreness of his body merely emphasised by the blue overalls, which were the uniform of the party. His hair was very fair, his face naturally sanguine, his skin roughened by coarse soap and blunt razor blades, and the cold of the winter that had just ended. Outside, even through the shut window pane, the world looked cold. Down in the street, little eddies of wind were whirling dust and torn paper into spirals, and though the sun was shining and the sky was a harsh blue, there seemed to be no colour in anything except the posters that were plastered everywhere. The black moustached face gazed down from every commanding corner. There was one on the house front immediately opposite. "Big Brother is watching you," the caption said, while the dark eyes looked deep into Winston's own. Down at street level, another poster, torn at one corner, flapped fitfully in the wind, alternately covering and uncovering in a single word, INGSOC. Ingsoc. In the far distance, a helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like a blue bottle, and darted away again with a curving flight. It was the police patrol, snooping into people's windows. The patrols did not matter, however. Only the thought police mattered. Behind Winston's back, the voice from the telescreen was still babbling away about pig iron and the overfulfillment of the 9th three-year plan. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. What do we think that means, simultaneously? If you said it means things happening at the same time, you'd be correct. So the telescreen, it both transmits the picture, so it's got the video running, and it receives pictures from inside Winston's flat. Any sound that Winston made above the level of a very low whisper would be picked up by it. Moreover, so long as he remained within the field of vision, which the metal plaque commanded, he could be seen as well as heard. There was, of course, no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any given moment, how often, or on what system. The thought police plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody at the same time. But at any rate, they could plug in your wire whenever they wanted to. You did live, from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and, except in darkness, every movement scrutinised. Winston kept his back turned to the telescreen. It was safer, though as he well knew, even a back can be revealing. A kilometre away, the Ministry of Truth, his place of work, towered vast and white above the grimy landscape. This, he thought, with a sort of vague distaste, this was London, chief city of Airstrip 1, itself the third most populous of the provinces of Oceania. He tried to squeeze out some childhood memory that should tell him whether London had always been like this. Were there always these vistas of rotting 19th century houses, their sides shored up with bulks of timber, their windows patched with cardboard, their roofs with corrugated iron? their crazy garden walls sagging in all directions, and the bombed sites where the plaster dust swirled in the air and the willow herb straggled over the heaps of rubble, and the places where the bombs had cleared a large patch and there had sprung up sordid colonies of wooden dwellings like chicken houses. But it was no use. He could not remember. Nothing remained of his childhood except a series of bright lit tableaux occurring against no background, mostly unintelligible. So a tableau, you might have done it in drama. It's when you make a still picture. So all he can remember are these brightly lit still pictures. Wonder why that is. Why can't he remember normal memories? The Ministry of Truth, Minitru, in Newspeak was the official language of Oceania. For an account of its structure and etymology, see appendix, was startlingly different from any other object in sight. It was an enormous pyramidal structure of glittering white concrete, soaring up terrace after terrace, 300 metres into the air. From where Winston stood, it was just possible to read, picked out on its white face in elegant lettering, the 3 slogans of the party. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. And that's where we're going to stop today. Don't forget to do your multiple choice quiz questions on the form, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.